Joel Poindexter is a student of economics and a part-time writer. His work has been published by us here at the 10th Amendment Center quite often. The Ludwig von Mises Institute, LouRockwell.com, Antiwar.com, and probably a few other places. And he's a contributing author to the book Voices of Revolution, Americans Speak Out for Ron Paul. Joel, awesome to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So you had this article that you wrote for us that we titled 5 Greatest Threats to Your Liberty Today. I wanted to kind of go over basically these just kind of in order. A lot of people have been giving us their feedback on what they think are the greatest threats and just get your view as to why these are the main problems. I like what you said at the beginning of the article where you put a kind of a qualifier. You said this: truth be told, there need only be one item on the list, the state, for it is the greatest single threat to liberty from which all other threats originate. Comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we wouldn't be talking about any of these other things were it not for the state. You know, the war on drugs, the war on food, these are not things that come from spontaneous order from free societies. This is something that a coercive body has to first decide to do and then carry out. So it's the state that brings us these things.
The first one of those that you mentioned there, the drug war, this is the first one that did you list these in order? Like, was this like an Olbermann-style countdown, or is it just kind of a random order? Because you mentioned the war on drugs, and basically the way you put it was war on property. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, well, I didn't necessarily rank them in least bad to most bad. I mean, they're all evil. It's sort of a loose ranking. I do, kind of make the point that the privacy war is probably the worst because it allows all the others. But yeah, the drug war, I mean, it's a war on property, not only from the perspective that I own my body so I can decide what to do with it, but also from the perspective that the drug warriors have to wage war on private property to make it work. A lot of people who support the drug war think, oh, it's not going to affect me because I don't do drugs, I don't live in the hood, whatever. It's not until they're driving down the interstate in Tennessee and get pulled over by the cops and have their property taken through civil asset forfeiture. So it's not just people who are in the drug industry that are targeted. It's you, me, it's anybody.
The top thing I think that we heard when we asked listeners and supporters to tell us what they think was the greatest, a number of people literally on our Facebook page just said one word: government. So they're probably agreeing with your qualifier right at the beginning. But other than that, I think the top one was the Federal Reserve, the banking system. And you talk about this a bit in the section that you titled Currency War. Tell us a little about that, your views.
Sure. I kind of meant it as sort of a play on the idea that two nations will have currency wars where one will devalue their currency in order to try to get a leg up, I guess, on another country's finances. But also in the sense that it almost is like a war on our money. When every time they add zeros in a spreadsheet or their computer software, or every time the Roman emperors would order their coins clipped, it devalues our currency and it makes it less robust. It makes it less buys less. And so yeah, I think that absolutely central banking is inherently based on theft, and I think in some ways bankers get a bad rap because we would have bankers in a free market. It's just the system that we have now. It plays on, like you mentioned earlier, it's a cartelization of the banking interests, and you end up with these huge credit bubbles and this massive spending that is allowed through fractional reserve banking.
Another area of war that you mentioned is the food war, or essentially the war on the human body, which you say are one and the same thing. And I love the fact that you quoted C.S. Lewis here, because his statement of all tyrannies, a tyranny exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. In what ways do you feel like this food war is one of the greatest threats to liberty?
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned it in the article that it's very similar to the drug war in that it has to do with property, has to do with what we do with our own bodies. But with the drug war, ostensibly it's meant to target certain segments of the population. It's meant to target the producers, the users, and anybody in between. But with the food war, literally everyone is affected by it, whether they want to be involved in it or not. Whether it's they're buying GMO-based products because the market has been manipulated through the tax laws and through even patent laws affect that. It drives the price down, and people are incentivized to buy this cheap product. And the folks who want to buy the real good, healthy food have to look for it. They have to pay a lot more because the way the market has been manipulated. And in some places, it's hard to find anything. You talk about food deserts in parts of the country, and that's not the free market. That's not a result of spontaneous order. That's a total. That's a result of the total state coming in and taking over stuff.
Joel, you talking about this food war, would you tie in basically like all the subsidies, the sugar subsidies? I know Republicans and Democrats were overwhelmingly in support of continuing these corporate handouts. Do you think that fits into that whole genre of what you're talking about right here?
Yeah, absolutely. You have, essentially a program where corn producers in this country are incentivized to produce corn through farm subsidies and other agricultural related stuff. But beyond that, there are import quotas on sugar that can come, because the U.S. doesn't really produce sugar. We have to import it from mostly Caribbean nations. But there's a quota placed on the amount that can be taken in. So it's like the supply is necessarily fixed, which not only causes the price of real cane sugar to be driven up beyond what it otherwise could be. And that's what causes, food manufacturers to use corn syrup. Because it's a lot cheaper. Not only is it subsidized, but it's in greater quantity. And so that's why, our soft drinks and you can look at, any ingredient on a processed food is going to have corn syrup in it virtually as a sweetener. And that's, people talk about, I went overseas and I had a Coke from, Mexico and it was so much better than ours. Well, it's because it's made with real sugar. It's not some processed material. Not that soda is really a natural, food anyway, but you get the point.
So you're basically saying that government is incentivizing these, so especially like in the food issue, so whether it's making it illegal to grow hemp or subsidizing one product or another, this is all basically comes back to what you said right off the bat. It's the state. Yeah,
you've got these well-entrenched agricultural companies. You look at like Monsanto, it's a giant corporation. Not only do they have all kinds of incentives through the cartelization of the food industry, but for instance, the patent laws. You can't patent a natural seed because it's found within the environment. But if you genetically modify it, if you can somehow prove to a patent attorney that, hey, I created this, then you can patent it. And then what happens is these big trucks drive down the roads and seeds fall out. They end up in a farmer's land. And then Monsanto or another agency, another corporation goes in and they test the product, of course trespassing this whole time. And then they can sue the farmer and say, hey, look, he's stealing our stuff. He's violating our intellectual property. It's just like Napster, only in farmland. And the small farmer has no choice but to shut down.
Man, this is American fascism at its best. Joel, can you stick through the break for a couple of minutes and take a few more questions on this issue?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. We're going to be right back here after a quick break right on 10th Radio.